Welcome to the Epherea TechCast, where we bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. I'm your host, Ezekiel Epherea, and today we are joined by Mark Gordon. Mark, known as the Rebel CRO, is the founder of Integrated Go-to-Market Solutions. He has scaled companies from $1 million to over 30 million in revenue by focusing on the core principle. Most businesses don't have a sales problem, but a clarity and alignment problem. He specializes in building systematic integrated revenue engines that allow founders to step out of the sales roles and scale sustainably. So in this episode, we will explore his methodical approach to aligning messaging, lead generation, and sales processes into a cohesive growth system. So, Mark, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the Epherea TechCast. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right, let's dive in. So, Mark, you call yourself the Rebel CRO. So, what's the core conventional belief or practice in sales and go to market that you are fundamentally rebelling against?
Yeah, there's a number of different things, and it's funny. Other people used to jokingly call me a rebel, and so I kind of just eventually ran with it. But long story short, I think a lot of times people think sales or marketing comes down to a personality or a specific viral approach, or they think something is kind of magically going to happen for them if they focus on one thing. The reality is that most organizations, it starts fundamentally with the idea that even the founder of the organization cannot, in a succinct way, tell people what the company does and who they do it for. And oftentimes, when I walk into companies and I'll ask 9 people I see in the hallway, hey, what do you guys do and who do you do it for? And I'll get 9 very different answers. And that does 2 things. One is it makes it impossible to market your company at scale and to sell the product because there's no alignment between the messaging you're using, the marketing strategies you're deploying, and what your sales team is saying. But internally, it actually creates a ton of problems for your organization as well. And you say, well, what do I mean? Well, when your engineering team or the product team doesn't know specifically in a succinct way what you do and who you do it for, everybody ends up doing what they're told to do by the person above them instead of thinking for themselves and understanding, hey, if I'm building a company or a product specifically for these people to solve this problem, then you allow them to make decisions in their own work that allows for them to make all these micro decisions that lead to better outcomes. And so if you don't have alignment inside your organization, there's no chance you're going to have alignment outside your organization. And I see so many exceptional products die on the vine just because people can't talk about them. And I see a lot of average or slightly above average products that do very well because they have that go-to-market alignment. And so you need to master distribution before you master a great product, because even a great product without great distribution, no one's going to buy it. No one's going to know about it.
All right, Mark. So you say that most companies don't have a sales problem, but they have a clarity and alignment problem. So for the engineers, the systematic thinkers in our audience, how do you diagnose, how do you diagnose that? What are the specific symptoms you look for?
So the first thing you can look at in any company that'll tell you that there is an alignment problem is if you go to their website and you can't figure out in 3 seconds what they do. I'll visit a lot of companies' websites. I'll spend 3 minutes or 30 minutes on their website and still not be able to figure out what they do. And again, this all comes back to the same problem I was talking about in the answer to my last question, which is if the person designing your website cannot adequately tell the world what you do in a snapshot, then there's no chance anyone else inside your company or outside your company is doing that well either. And one of the cop out answers I'll get from tech people or engineers is, well, Mark, you don't understand. Our product is very technical, it's very nichey. Our audience, our very specific audience, they understand what we do. No, they don't. And if that offends you or hurts your feelings, I'm glad, because maybe you need to hear this. If you can't explain it to a ninth grader or to my mom at Christmas dinner in a way that they understand what you do, then even the very smartest people inside your target audience, they're also not going to be able to understand it. But worse, because they're smart and because they think they know what they do, they won't tell you they don't understand it. They'll just nod and smile, and then you guys will have this disconnect, and then people don't become buyers. And so you have to know very specifically what basic fundamental problem you're solving and be able to communicate that to somebody in about 2 sentences. And until you get that right, you're going to have a really hard time scaling your product.
All right, great response. So let's get a bit tactical. So can you walk us through, the process of fixing a broken message? So like, what's the first exercise you do with the founder and their team to go from muddy to being crystal clear?
So I sit down with what number of people. First of all, I'll sit down with usually 5 or 6 key individuals within the organization. It's people from different departments, like a tech team, a marketing team, a product team. We'll have those different conversations. I'll also sit down with their 5 or 6 biggest or longest clients and hear from them why they use this organization, why they continue to use this product, and what makes them special. And once we have talked and I really dig in, I ask the hard questions. I say, hey, wave your magic wand. If there was one thing you could change about this company or the product or what it is, what would it be? Right. We want people to use their imagination and really kind of get into the psychology of the person on the other side of the table and figure out, hey, what's really going on here? And why are people using us, the ones that do use us? Once we feed all that information into our models, it usually becomes very obvious what this company does and who they do it for. And sometimes there's more than one answer, right? So maybe you need 5 2-sentence answers to talk about what you do and who you do it for. But all of those 5 answers need to be something that anyone can understand. Any normal intelligence person can understand that would instantly get, right? So if I said to you, what does Amazon do? Right. Well, Amazon has their web service team, they have their product team and their delivery. So you may have different answers for each of their different departments or units of the company. But within 2 sentences, it's very easy for you to say what those companies do. And if it wasn't, they wouldn't have scaled the way that they have. Right. Like at Amazon, what do they do in their main product line? Well, they have basically every product under the sun, and they're able to get it to you in a record amount of time at a price that feels fair. I understand what they do. It's very simple, right? So, and by the way, they might have a very different way of explaining it, but that's how I would explain it. How often have you had somebody call you to try to sell you something and they start to explain to you what they do? It takes you forever to even figure out what it would do for you. Right. And so, from a system perspective, we dig in with those key stakeholders in the organization and those key clients that they've worked with for a long time, and then really piece together that messaging, and we keep refining it and working with it. There's a little bit of art in that process until I can walk up to anybody on the street and go, hey, if I said to you, we did this, do you understand what I'm saying? Does it make sense to you? Yes. And then if they go, hey, and by the way, tell me more about that, then I know I've hit something, right? I want to be able to deliver that message in a way that says, tell me more about that, because it's the same thing you're trying to do with your website. If the header on your website or the banner on your LinkedIn page gets somebody to understand what you do and they go, oh, I'd like to learn a little bit more about that, especially if it's your ideal customer, now you know you're onto something. And we just keep futzing with it until we get it right.
All right. So, Mark, you've helped scaled companies from 1 million to over 30 million. So, what's the single most common structural flaw in the $1 million company's revenue engine that, if not fixed, guarantees that they'll store before that $30 million?
So this might not be the answer that you're expecting or what you look for, but the reason why companies get stuck at $1 million is because the leader of those organizations either has blind spots to what they're good at and what they're not good at, or it doesn't know them, right? They're blind spots. They don't know what their weaknesses are. Or if they do know their weaknesses, they don't understand what options are available to them in terms of who to hire, consultants, different project managers. They don't know how to avoid or get around those limitations. I often say that it's not an accident when companies get stuck where they are. There's fundamental things that they're missing or failing to deliver on. And those things almost always start and finish with the leader and their ability to see reality and make the changes or adjustments that are needed at the right time. And what's very interesting is that the companies that, if you say, well, Mark, how do you meet $1 million company? and know if they're the kind of company that's going to get to 20 million. And here's what I'll say is if I talk to the leader and that leader knows, the best leaders I'll say in this state, like, hey, I know we stink at this, and this. It's all on our roadmap. I'm not dealing with those things right now because I'm laser focused on this. And then once we get this done, we'll address the next thing. Those are the companies that do end up doing really well and succeeding. The ones that seem unaware, when I say, hey, like, well, what are you working on to get to 2 million or 10 million? And they're like, well, a few different things, or like, maybe this or that. And they have these blind spots. Those are the ones that get stuck. And so if you're wherever you are in your business today, whether it's 100,000, a million, 10 million, 100 million, if you're sitting there going, yeah, like, we have a couple things I'd like to get better, but like, we're going to keep doing the same thing and you expect to get much different results, almost never going to happen, right? You're going to need to have a real awareness of you're going to need to radically improve in a number of different areas to make that sort of a leap. And so if the leader knows what those things are and has a plan to address them as they come up, you have a really good chance of continuing to scale. If the leader is like, yeah, we're just going to kind of keep doing what we're doing and it's going to snowball, usually it doesn't, right? If you keep doing the same stuff, you're usually going to get the same results.
All right. So, say, imagine the scenario there's a founder who is the best salesperson in the company. So, what is the first most critical hire or process they need to build to start getting out of sales without watching revenues collapse?
Well, I think it's a process, right? And so one of the biggest things I always say to leaders is there's a difference between delegation and abdication. So what you'll see sometimes is the founder is a great salesperson. They go, oh, I hired a new head of sales. Well, first of all, is the head of sales that you hired, were they a VP at some big company and now you're asking them to be able to go build a new process? Those people are usually going to fail. You need your first head of sales hire when you're trying to get out of sales is to be somebody who's done it from scratch before and understands what the team needs and how to build those fundamental building blocks at the beginning of a new company's scaling. So you can't pull somebody from a huge organization and then expect them to go figure it out for your organization. But the second thing is that there is a process to this, meaning that oftentimes I see the CEOs that struggle to get out of this is because they don't like to work collaboratively. It's like, hey, listen, this is my client. That's your client. You do mine. I do yours. Very difficult to transition that way. Most people are not going to figure it out that way. And so what you want to do is start taking the things off of your plate slowly that somebody else is able to do. But you also want to work with someone that you think has the aptitude to eventually own the process. And so there's a collaboration period where you guys might be working together on things where that person is learning your process and getting it going. Now, is it possible to get a really great hire that can do these things on their own and scale it on their own? It is very possible, but you better expect to pay more than you want to, an amount that makes you uncomfortable in order to attract somebody talented enough to build. Because when you find another sales leader who is talented enough to build, most of those people will just go start their own companies, right? Unless your product is magical, they can go start their own thing, right? They have that founder mentality. And so you're going to need to offer them something they can't build on their own. Maybe it's equity in something that's a technical product or whatever else it is. And so, I actually just had a client meeting where a potential client meeting where I met their head of sales and I'm like, this is a nice sales guy, but this is not going to be the head of sales. And the founder has a sales background, but he's also building this very technical product and spending his time there. And so it's not a surprise to me that they're not growing as fast as they need to. And when I'll ask that sales leader, hey, why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that yet? Their answer is, well, because this person didn't do it or that person didn't do it. And that's a mentality thing I hear right away. It's like, okay, well, you can't be the original sales leader of this company because when you're an original sales leader, when you're a builder of a company, you know that if it's never somebody else's fault it didn't get built. It's you, right? I got to find a way, whether I do it myself, whether I bring in somebody else from my department, whether I outsource it on Fiverr. Hey, if it's not done, I got to find a way to get this done. I got to find a way to get it done within the budget. And the buck stops with me. And so if you're a founder and you're looking to offload sales to somebody else, you better find somebody with that founder mentality of find a way to get it done, that problem solver and solution oriented person. Because if you just find somebody who's good at sales or even good at hiring a sales team, they will sink in an organization that lacks structure. And by definition, all founder led companies where the founder's doing sales lack structure, right? Like that's normal. And so you cannot plug somebody in and then abdicate, which is like leave them alone and say, go handle it. You have to delegate. And by when we delegate, people don't do what we expect, they do what we inspect. So delegate, inspect the work, transition slowly, and find somebody who has that solution oriented mentality. It's willing to take ownership for all outcomes. That's going to be your best bet.
Great. So, Mark, you emphasize building a sales motion that works without you. So, what does the architecture for that autonomous system look like? Is it about playbooks, technology, or the hiring or the mindset?
Yeah, I think it's about finding motivated people and creating an environment where they can thrive.
Hmm.
And by the way, another thing that you'll hear is like hire really talented people and let them figure out what to do. There is a little bit of truth in that, but I think it's the message has been really tainted in a way that has led to some bad outcomes. Creating an environment where motivated people can thrive means they have to absolutely know what the rules of the game are so that they can actually go make the decisions they need to thrive. So if people don't know what the goals are, short term, long term, where the company's headed, what financial constraints there are, what their options are in terms of being able to hire or bring people on or spend budget, or there are all these different cultural things you need to be able to do in the organization. What are your non-negotiables that create guardrails for that person who's super motivated to thrive? Because if you don't give them any walls at all, if you don't give them any guardrails, then they're floating around trying to figure it out in a way that's very uncomfortable. So if you want to have that sales motion that exists without you, it is okay, cool. Here is what we do. Here is the playbook for where we are. Who do I need to put into these different situations so they can execute their portion of the playbook? And then you need to have an inspection process to make sure that those things are working the way that they're supposed to. The reason why I have a somewhat vague answer here is that we find that we work with all sorts of companies across different industries. Each company and each product has a specific set of circumstances, and the talent on their team is a specific set of skills that kind of change the answers for how we would go about this process. It's not like building widgets on an assembly line most of the time. Now, when you get to real scale as a company, yes, it becomes more like, but in the early stages where you're trying to maximize resources and people are doing multiple jobs and that founder's trying to pull themselves out of that sales motion, it's really why it's so helpful to hire an outside consultant who can tell you, hey, here's what I'm seeing with your team. Here's the structure I think makes most sense for you. And I'll put that plan in place and implement it. And I think it's very hard to have that visibility from inside the day to day of the organization.
All right. So, how do you practically integrate AI and automation into a go-to-market strategy in a way that enhances human connection and insight, rather than just becoming another layer of robotic spam?
Well, I have to sort of push back on your question a little bit. And so I'll say is there are certain companies and products where human connection is fundamental to what they're trying to do.
Okay.
But having said that, that's never part of my equation when I'm evaluating what recommendations I'm making for a company. I believe in mission driven organizations, meaning that there's a mission that you're trying to serve and get to, and then the scoreboard for your ability to execute that mission is actually profit. Unless you're running a nonprofit, in which case that's great, and we're not going to work together because that's not what we do. But generally, the mission is to deliver some sort of a result to a certain group of people and to be able to do it at a profit. And you'll hear companies say like, well, we're doing so great, we're growing like crazy, but they're losing money. And like I understand there are growth stage companies and that's part of it, but the reality is it's kind of easy to run a great company with great culture if you're not worried about the bottom line. What's really difficult is delivering an exceptional service or product, having an exceptional company culture, and being able to do that at a profit that enables you to keep growing and reinvesting back into your business and your people. And so when I think about AI and putting that into my structure of my company, it is how do I create an environment where I can deliver the same or better client experience or the same or better product at a more substantial profit or to a greater number of people, right? And so we are very results focused in what we do, which is and I believe that the only way to measure that success is profitability. Now that people will get mad at me and say that that's some kind of like venture capitalist look at it, or that It takes some of the morality out of business. And I'll just share that I think the companies that do the most amount of good do it from a place of strength. And I think it's easier to be conscious of some of these other things once you're running a really profitable organization. I think when I've run a company where basically we were breaking even, it's a very difficult to think about anything other than just trying to survive at that point. And so, my recommendation is, I'm not worried about the human connection part of it, unless that's a fundamental piece of what we're trying to do and it's part of our overall mission. What I want to think about is how can I deliver the best, how can I fix the most problems for the most people at a price point that both makes sense for them and allows us to be profitable. That is the ultimate problem we're trying to solve in business. And so I believe that AI actually helps us at almost every piece of that stage right now. And that question is evolving. I mean, month to month, my answer changes on where you should be using AI in your business. But like one of our clients right now that we're working with has the leading software for AI SDRs, right? It will literally call and set up meetings for salespeople, and it's completely AI. And the technology is there, and it's getting better every single day. People say, well, what about all the SDRs? What about their jobs? Well, part of it is going to be that those people are going to have to, some of those jobs are going to go away. That's the reality of it. My job as a consultant is not to worry about that part of it. And I do worry about it for humanity, and I don't have all the answers for where the world is going. But from a company perspective, my major concern is, hey, when does this become something we can't ignore? Because we're competing in a marketplace with other companies. That's capitalism, right? And so, what do we need to do to make sure that we are not pioneers? We're not taking risks unnecessarily by doing things before they're ready. But once they're ready, how can we be quick to settle and quick to move into that space so we can take advantage of this new technology? And so, I think, what I would be doing as a CEO, what I am doing as a CEO, is constantly evaluating where we're at on that technology curve. And I'm never trying to be first. I'm never trying to be a pioneer. But as soon as something is proven to be working and other people are using it, we know that we need to be on the forefront of implementing it. And we want to be smarter about how we implement it than our competitors. So, with the idea that we can always deliver a better, faster, or cheaper product to our customers at a price point that we can still make profit.
All right. So, for you, Mark, after helping so many companies, so what continues to surprise you the most about the gap between how a founder sees their product and how their ideal customer actually perceives it?
What surprises me the most in that specific situation is that I think founders at the beginning of their process actually do have a pretty clear vision in their head of what problem they're trying to solve and who they're trying to solve it for. I think what happens to good salespeople and to good leaders while they're going through their learning curve is that we start to let our no's train us more than our yeses. So I'll explain what I mean. I will see a technical founder who built an amazing product. We'll be like, our sales are struggling. What I'm going to go do is go make the product better. And then, and so they obsess over they have one customer say, hey, your product should do this. And they'll spend months trying to do that one thing for that one customer. And they lose sight of the mission, which is to build a product that is good enough that it solves problems for a large number of people at scale. And they have information that actually matters to the majority of their ideal customer profile, right? And so what I find often is that founders are obsessing about small problems, a little glitch in this part of the system, something that one or two customers ask for out of the 100 that they have. And they're obsessing over that thing instead of spending that same amount of time working on how they're going to distribute that product, how they're going to get it in front of more people, how they're going to get more people to use it, how they're going to make it more profitable. And I'll just share that I think that that line of thinking is broken. Most of the founders that I'm talking to have a product that is good enough to go to market with and scale right now. Yes, do you want to continue to improve that product? Of course you do. But when you're profitable, it's much easier to spend the money to go make your product better. If you run back to the lab and try to make your product better every time you have a marketing or sales issue, it doesn't matter how good your product is if your go to market machine isn't working. And so I'll just share this way is that so often a broken messaging system, a broken lead generation system, a broken sales process can tell the founder your product isn't good enough. And your sales team will always, by the way, your sales team will always blame the product. Well, we'd be able to sell it if it had this one more thing. We'd be able to sell it if it did this a little bit faster. We'd be able to sell this if it was a little bit cheaper. It's like, great, then I don't need a sales team, right? The whole point of being a sales team is hey, we know it's not perfect and we're going to go out there and find a market for it anyway, right? But if as a founder, if you start letting the naysayers, the people on your team that say it needs to be better, your customers that say it needs to be better, the people that didn't buy it that say it needs to be better, and you start obsessing about that, then you miss the fact that there's probably an ocean of people out there that would be thrilled to have your product today, and they either don't know about it or haven't had anybody to talk to them about it yet. And so focus on the ocean of people that can benefit from your product as it exists today first, and then start trying to make it better. Don't try to make your product perfect and then expect the people in the ocean to show up wanting it, because they don't. It doesn't work that way. And oftentimes you'll spend a bunch of time working on something that you'll find out later didn't matter.
All right. So, part of the theme of this podcast, Mark, is centered around innovations. For that reason, I like to save one question on innovation for every guest that I have a conversation with. So, in your work, systematically deconstructing and rebuilding the go-to-market engines, to create clarity, alignment, and self-sustaining revenue. So, what does the word innovation truly mean to you?
I don't know that you probably have a million guests on here that are better at that question than I am. And what I'll say is the reason why I went into a career where I teach other people how to distribute their product to the world and to get sales and marketing is because I didn't have my own innovation idea. What I'll say about innovation is that I see it happening inevitably all around us for the most part. I think true innovators, people that end up building and designing things that wouldn't exist if they didn't build it, are incredibly rare. I look at someone like an Elon Musk, where it's like, if he didn't build some of the things he's building, I don't think they'd get built. I actually think he's like moving humanity forward, or accelerating whatever, whether you think it's good or bad. I think there's things that are happening that he's doing that wouldn't be happening if he wasn't doing them. And that's what I mean by innovation. I'm not an innovator. That's not how I think. To me, I have 100 ideas for companies. They all sound pretty good. None of them seem great. None of them seem bad, because I believe what makes any of that stuff interesting to me is the execution. And so to me, the innovation for me is in how do you continue to give founders the ideas and the resources and the frameworks and the knowledge so they can take the thing they're really passionate about, that they want to innovate on, and take it from dream or idea into profitable business. Because I do believe that there is a tremendous knowledge gap that exists kind of naturally between the kinds of people that are innovators and product developers who are so brilliant at what they do. And then I think it is a completely different skill set to go ahead and put that out to market. And what makes somebody like an Elon so impressive to me is people will be like, well, Elon, he runs 7 companies. Like, well, he always has time for a really good podcast. And you're like, well, think about that for a second. That's Elon telling you that he believes distribution is actually the most important thing too. He's constantly investing in his brand, in his image, in distribution, going on podcasts, getting out there, because he knows that his ability to be Elon Musk and the brand that exists in that is vitally important to being able to execute and sell his products and raise money and do all these other things. And so when you see that, the innovation to me is the founders that figured out, and you'll see it all over the place, that distribution comes first. Once you have distribution, you can almost sell anything, right? That's where the real innovation is going to come from. And then where do you see these real partnerships exist between the types of people in the world that have distribution already, and how do they become founders or equity partners with somebody who's a true innovator in the technological sense of it? And do they go to market in their own way and say, hey, I'm going to use your network and your ability to distribute, and you're going to use, and this person's going to use your ability to innovate and build a tech product, and those people are going to get married. Because I'll tell you, especially with AI, the mass distribution models that companies without brand have relied on, like cold email and LinkedIn and all those other different things, it's going to get harder and harder to stand out in those environments. And the automatic winners are going to be the people that already have an audience. And that audience can be a couple thousand really loyal followers, or it can be 100 million people on YouTube. But if you have that audience, you're going to have a huge leg up in whatever products you take to market over the next 5, 10, 15 years, because you're the one who's going to be able to get the attention needed to get eyes on that product and get people to buy it.
All right. So finally, Mark, for our listeners who want to, go learn more about your strategies or perhaps get resources from you and maybe connect with you or follow you. So where is the best place for them to go?
Yeah, my name is Mark D. Gordon on Instagram. You can follow me there. Mark D as in Douglas Gordon on Instagram, or you can go to igtms.com. That's igtms.com. Our name of our company is Integrated Go to Market Solutions. And you can hit all my other socials there. We're very active on LinkedIn as well. And so, yeah, follow us there and check out the website and do a little research on it. What I'll just share is this is if you feel like you have a product that deserves more attention, if you have a product that should be selling better than it is, if you have a product that needs to be in more people's hands and you haven't figured out how to make that happen yet, we're the people you want to come to solve that problem. And we won't work with everybody, but if we also believe in your product and we also believe in your service and what you're doing, and we think it deserves to get out to the world, then we'll take you on as a client and we'll make sure that the right people are seeing that messaging. And I think that for a lot of founders that are working with us, they're finding that not only are we changing their lives and the companies that they're working in, but we're helping them change the lives of lots of other people that are getting to use those products.
Great, Mark. This has been a really insightful conversation, and I am indeed excited to have you on the show today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated being here.